spirit, let me start with you, Douglas. I think you're back in Israel. Is that right?
Yes, I'm in Israel tonight, yeah.
Today it was a sea of other stories have come out in the last few days, which have been concerning, I think. For anyone who, like me, believes that Israel has not just a moral duty to defend itself, but has a fundamental right to do so after what happened on October the 7th. And I've said that clearly from the start. It's always been, for me, the issue of proportionality. And it seems that in the last few days, there have been a number of incidents which really question whether Israel is being precise, as it says it is, or indiscriminate. And I would cite the killing of the 3 hostages. I would cite the killing of the 2 women outside the Catholic Church. I would cite the President of the United States saying that they're using indiscriminate bombing, and so on. Do you, Douglas, notwithstanding your full throttle support of Israel, does anything that's been happening make you think Israel needs to execute this war differently?
No, and I think that most of the people who think they know how to execute this war have never executed a war. Indeed, most people who think they know how the IDF should be running this conflict have never been near a conflict. I'm in Israel tonight. I was in Gaza again yesterday. And the examples that you give, by the way, Piers, I don't see why they show any need to prosecute the war itself differently. I mean, just to take one of them, the first example you give, the absolutely tragic, awful shooting of these 3 hostages as they were coming out. But, you know, some of the spin that's been put on that in the world, apart from the glee, of course, that Israel's enemies can't help expressing, some of the spin on that is almost as if it shows the IDF is sort of so brutal that it even kills Hamas hostages who are Israeli. I just think this is another example of the international media and others just having this astounding lack of empathy for the Israeli people. Can you imagine what it was like for those soldiers who were in Gaza, knowing that at any point there were snipers, there are booby traps everywhere, people coming out of tunnels that they've built at British and American taxpayer expenses and attacking them? Can you imagine what it was like for the soldiers who, in that terrible moment, made the life-changing mistake of shooting 3 people who turned out to be Hamas hostages?
But why would they? But Douglas, on that, why would they shoot anyone who was shirtless and waving an SOS flag? I mean, why would whoever they were, whether they were Israeli hostages or whether they thought they were Palestinians, why would anyone shoot anyone who comes out like that? That's my point.
That'll be a matter for the inquiry into it. But, look, it's hardly as if they'd have wanted to have done that. What this demonstrates is, in this incredibly close conflict, in a heavily built-up area, with people coming out from all sides, firing, shooting, detonating, people make mistakes. Of course they do. That's just a human reality of war, horrible as it is. I don't think it shows in any way that Israel is prosecuting this war wrongly. As for the main issue of the war is to destroy Hamas. No Israeli of left or right or center believes anymore after October the 7th that they can live beside Hamas. Hamas has been given the statelet of Gaza. It was given it in 2006, voted in, then killed their fellow Palestinians in a coup, killed Fatah rivals, and they've run the Gaza for almost 18 years now. And they've produced a new generation of people whose main aim in life, it seems, according to their textbooks and their classes, is to regard Jews as enemies who should be killed. This is just an unbelievable waste, a waste of life on every side. But apart from anything else, a waste of those Palestinian lives, of children who grew up under Hamas's rule, if you can call it that, who have been indoctrinated into becoming sociopaths by a psychopathic terror organization, Hamas.
All right.
All right, there we go. That is an excerpt from a Piers Morgan, somebody who is a Trump supporter, so I don't really follow him, but he tries to referee as much as he can. Refereeing between Cenk Uygur, and he's on the left, a Democrat, and Douglas Murray, who seems to be dyed in the wool. What did Piers Morgan call him? Some pro-Israel advocate. I find it all interesting that we will not likely know exactly what's going on. We have a problem with the media and with the coverage of the Gaza war. We have a problem because the sources of any information coming out of Gaza has to be, well, I'm not going to say vetted necessarily, but it comes with approval, tacit approval by Hamas, a terrorist organization who is citing the statistics, who is citing the events. And then we have the IDF. Are they a state army, or are they rogues? Are they just trigger happy, killing willy-nilly? Or is it a measured response, despite what they would observe, and the main criticism is proportionality? Are they guilty of being random killers who just bomb the snot out of everything and everyone? Is it random? Is it just unproportional, improportional, whatever the word is? It's not equal. Well, is it equal? Where did we get the concept of equal from? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? That's supposed to be justice, so you kidnap and kill 1,250 or so Israeli citizens, not soldiers, citizens, and you brutalize them. That's intentionality of a war crime. This is not how civilians are to be treated. And by brutalizing, I mean all the nastiness that you know of that takes place, including sexual, mental, physical torment and torture and all the rest of that. And there are still hostages that remain. Hamas is in control. They were in control from the start, and they decided when to go. They decided how to go. They decided, they trained, they maybe used Iranian money. They were in charge of Gaza since 2006. Israel pulled out altogether. The main arguments against Israel seem to go in terms of a left-leaning narrative that includes the following terms, in my opinion. Colonialism is the big one, that Israel is being a colonial power, just like England was. That there is an apartheid system of governance in Israel. I don't know that I would say it's in Gaza, because that's controlled by Hamas. Whatever they do in Gaza is up to them. So how do you say apartheid? Anyway, those are two of the big terms. And then, of course, genocide is the biggest term, and that's where proportionality goes in. And apparently, you need to break it down because the numbers sound, on the surface, very lopsided. And so there seems to be some legitimacy. And you would argue from the starting point that all life is valuable. So who determines whose life is not as valuable? Well, Hamas made that determination on October 7th when they raided the various kibbutzim and decided who they were going to kill, who they're going to capture, who they're going to torture, who they're going to maim, and all the rest of the nastiness that went on. So on some level, that was all predetermined. Proportionality, I think, goes out the window when a terrorist organization takes a toll on a neighboring state. And I don't know that we can put shackles on the response. I know the UN wants to. I know the US would like to. I know the world community would like to see peace. But is it a case of peace at any price, which is a reference to the document that Chamberlain, Prime Minister of England, returned home to Heathrow Airport with a paper wagging in the wind and flapping, saying, "There will be peace in our times," and it was signed by Adolf Hitler. And that was in 1930, I'm going to say 39, before September, because that's when the war started. There will be peace. Peace at any price? Adolf Hitler's signature on it. I'm not sure. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's easy to make things in our own framework and from our own lens. But war is above all anything but neat and tidy. I am interested in ethics, and I am interested in how we measure it, but quantitative measurement is only one. That's the proportionality. So, yeah, it looks like 1,250 and 40,000 is not good. But then you look at how the war was developed. What are the antecedents? Where did all the billions of dollars that were spent by both the UN and Western countries and Iran, where did that money go? It didn't go to help improve the lives of people in Gaza. Where did it go? Tunnels. It went to water for the leaders. It went to money for the bank accounts of the leaders. It went to buying and developing weapon systems to launch and attack Israel. It did all of those things and did nothing to lead the people, the Palestinian people, to prosperity in Gaza. They had a chance, and on October 7th, they wagered that their odds of a better future was a future from the river to the sea without Israel, so that they could be free. Freedom? Really? With the extermination, and that's the genocide of Israel as a nation. Get rid of the Jews. And there is so much to get into and not enough time to really ponder so much of it, just to say that it's complicated. And when it gets complicated, we all have our pet argument. We all have the thing that we say, yeah, but. And that yeah, but happened to me at a family gathering where one side was definitely seeing Hamas and seeing the Palestinians, seeing the death toll as being the be-all and the end-all. End of story. There is no discussion, no ability to parse it, to break it down, to have nuance, to understand anti-Semitism from colonialism, to understand terrorism from state-sponsored war, to understand strategic bombing versus random killing and murdering. We got to separate it all. And that is tricky. At the best of times, ask me. Had it out with a sibling of mine on the weekend. Difference of opinion? Yes. What are the facts? That's what I would like to bring to the table. And how do we know whose facts? We're not entitled to our own. Whose facts prevail? It's worth a discussion. It isn't worth yelling and screaming and turning red and leaving. Stay in the discussion. The hard stuff requires level heads to prevail. The Jim and Terry Show. Bye-bye for now.